It was just another quiet night at Miller's Diner, the kind where the smell of coffee hangs in the air and the neon sign flickers in the rain. An old black man sat alone, slowly stirring his soup, lost in thought. But outside, police sirens echoed closer, then stopped. The diner door swung open, and two uniformed cops stormed in, their eyes locked on him. No one understood why. The man froze as one officer slammed his baton on the table. "You don't belong here," he said coldly. The room fell silent, and within minutes, what happened in that diner would become national news and change everything. Before we continue this story, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and like this video so we can bring you even more amazing stories like this one. The old man's name was James Porter, a 62-year-old mechanic who had lived in the small town of Arlington, Virginia, all his life. A man of quiet dignity, he had worked hard, paid his taxes, and raised his family with love and discipline. Every Friday night, after finishing work, James came to Miller's Diner, the only place that served his favorite chicken stew. But lately, things in town had changed. Racial tension was thick in the air. Murmurs of resentment, unspoken stares, and quiet discrimination. James had felt it, but he never imagined it would turn violent. That night, he chose the booth by the window, unaware that a storm was brewing outside. Two local officers, known for their arrogance, were on patrol, frustrated after being reprimanded earlier for misconduct. They were looking for control, for power, for someone to humiliate. When they entered the diner, their eyes immediately locked on James, the only black man inside. The waitress froze. The few other diners looked away. The officers didn't ask questions. They demanded. "Get up!" one barked. "This table's for white folks." The words sliced through the air like a knife. James looked around, hoping someone would speak up, but no one did. He quietly said, "Sir, I'm just finishing my meal." But before he could say more, one cop grabbed his shoulder, pushing him out of his seat. And just like that, a peaceful dinner became a public humiliation. James stumbled as his plate crashed to the floor. The sound echoed through the diner. Loud, sharp, final. Everyone sat frozen in silence, pretending not to see, pretending it wasn't happening. One of the officers sneered. "Didn't you hear me? I said get out." James tried to stand tall. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. I have every right to be here." But his calm tone only made them angrier. The younger cop, full of adrenaline and hate, shoved him hard against the wall. "Don't talk back to us," the waitress, trembling, whispered. "Please, just let him finish his food." But she was ignored. The older officer smirked. "You people always think you're victims." James raised his hands slightly. "Please, I don't want trouble." That's when the first hit came. A baton slammed against his ribs, forcing him to his knees. Gasps filled the room, but still, no one moved. The second officer joined in, kicking him as he fell. Outside, the rain poured harder, washing blood into the street. Inside, humanity disappeared. Phones started recording. One teenager secretly filmed from behind the counter. The video captured everything: the punches, the racial slurs, the brutality. When they finally dragged James outside, he was barely conscious. They threw him to the ground, handcuffed him, and left him in the mud beside the patrol car. As they mocked him, one cop laughed. "Let's see how tough you are now." But fate was already writing a different ending. Because while James lay on the ground, bleeding and broken, a phone in his pocket buzzed. It was a call he couldn't answer, from his son, Marcus Porter, a White House security chief. At that same moment, Marcus was monitoring live feeds in Washington, D.C., preparing for a security briefing with the president. He didn't know his father was being beaten in a small diner just miles away, but soon he would. An hour later, Marcus received a text message that made his blood run cold. "Your father, Miller's Diner, attacked by cops. It's all over the news." He froze. For a moment, the world around him blurred. Then instinct took over. He called his team, requested immediate access to Arlington Police HQ, and within minutes, his black SUV was speeding down the highway with sirens blaring. By the time Marcus arrived at the diner, local reporters were already there. The video had gone viral. Millions of views in under an hour. The officers' faces were everywhere. Their cruelty exposed to the nation. Marcus pushed through the crowd, flashing his credentials. Cameras followed. He didn't care. He just wanted to see his father. When he entered the ambulance, James was lying weakly on the stretcher, bruised but alive. Their eyes met, and that single look said everything words could not. Outside, the police chief arrived, pale and sweating, realizing who Marcus was. He tried to apologize, but Marcus cut him off. "This man," Marcus said, his voice steady but burning with rage, "served this country, paid his dues, and raised me to believe in justice. And your officers beat him because of his skin." The crowd was silent. The cameras caught every word. Marcus turned to the officers who had done it, now in cuffs themselves. "You didn't just beat a man," he said coldly. "You beat the father of a man who protects your nation's leader." Within hours, the story spread nationwide. Protests erupted. Government officials demanded answers. The two cops were suspended, then arrested. Days later, James recovered in a hospital bed. Marcus sat beside him, holding his hand. The world outside had changed. People were finally talking about what had happened, about how deep racism still ran, even in quiet towns. News anchors called it the diner incident. Politicians called for reform. But for James, it wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. When reporters asked him what he wanted to say to the officers, James simply replied, "I forgive them, but I won't forget, because the world needs to remember that respect should never depend on color." That moment became the most shared clip of the week. A calm, broken man teaching the world about strength. Marcus later attended a national hearing on police accountability, where he testified about what happened. His closing words silenced the room. "Justice isn't about punishment. It's about change. My father's pain should never happen to another man again." The diner eventually closed down, but a memorial plaque was placed where James once sat, reading, "He sat with peace, but the world woke up with his pain." And while the nation moved on to new stories, that night at Miller's Diner remained a turning point, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with ordinary people who refuse to stay silent. Because, in the end, the truth always finds a voice, even when justice arrives too late.